Sorry.
So let me clarify that one of the emails that you should have gotten asked to stay a little bit later today till 7:15. Nobody is getting these?
I didn't get that.
I didn't get it.
Email from my husband because he's making dinner.
Because we have a number of things to do. Also, you should have gotten an attachment with the proposal for the Connie Bean Center.
I did get that.
Okay.
I did get that.
Good. And also just a note that a couple of things that we're going to do tonight. One is that we will talk about the proposed sculpture for Bohinkel Park. And for people who were not part of our meeting last time, we in executive session did have a consensus that we wanted to move forward with one of the finalists for the Portsmouth 400 competition. And so, but tonight we do want to do a formal vote on that, but we have an opportunity to hear from the artist who's here as a guest and be able to ask questions and perhaps make some comments about where we think the sculpture would go or other things about it. So that with background, and we have Laura and Terrence here who are going to make a presentation to us as well. So we'll try to move fairly quickly and address a number of the pieces that we've got.
Am I supposed to be taking minutes tonight?
Who said that they would do?
Because you and I switched.
Well, that's right. the
Okay.
two of you switched.
I have to leave at 6:30 though. Because I didn't get the information about staying late. So if somebody wants to.
I'll jump in after 6:30.
Okay, great. Thank you, Robin and Jen. So let's first the minutes of May 21st and a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, Jen, any corrections on those? So
Who made the motion?
Beth made the motion, second by Jen.
Jen, yeah, I got that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Couple of updates, the temporary art guidelines, Mara and.
Yeah, we'll
Jen,
get that. We'll send that around. We haven't.
You haven't done that? Okay.
We'll can send that around.
Sean, Pure Silent?
I emailed the artist earlier this week or late last week, to ask if we were still on schedule for mid-July. They said yes. Although July is very soon. If I were to place a bet, I would place a bet on late July.
Yeah.
I'm gonna email them again this week.
City council actions on things that we have presented since our last meeting. The Judy Schubert, people were very pleased with that. Rec department is pleased with that. And they accepted that at their previous June meeting. And then the other night, they accepted the Ferry House memo, but without discussion. And there were some kind of key things in it related to discussion. So I followed up today with the deputy city manager to kind of point out that location, definitive location, support for installation, at least cooperation with DPW for installation. And I understand there was a meeting today with DPW, and nobody's pleased with the location that we and Fosse recommended. So they are going to do their own sidewalk and recommend a location. But I would ask Sean if you would ask that come back to us. Because we spent a lot of time on that related to safety and where children could see it and not be hurt by it, et cetera. So
Did they give a reason why so that we understand for future placement ideas?
don't have that yet.
Okay.
But they may find the same thing that we did, that as you look for various places and you consider accessibility, safety, sight lines, traffic, that there aren't that many options. So we'll see. And then on a good note, the CIP budget included another $25,000 for public art, and that passed with the budget. Kate, do you want to make any comment?
No, I just had a question about the Judy Schubert piece.
Yeah.
Because Judy reached out to me to ask who at the city she should talk to help coordinate. She wanted to make sure she helped with framing and that kind of thing. Do you know who I should I have send her to you, Sean?
Sure.
Okay, great. Great.
I think it's gonna end up with the rec center, if that's where it's going, but I can coordinate rec and facilities and all that good stuff.
So in our trust fund, then we have $50,000 now that, so we have a solid budget there, especially for maintenance. I know that's been a concern there. The HDC, the review that we did of the Ona Judge mural, at the first hearing of the HDC, they did not approve it, they didn't disapprove it, but there were members who felt that it should be smaller. And the chair did, I thought, a really good job of arguing for why it's a mural, so it should cover the wall, not be a picture as if it were framed, but she could not get the votes for that. So it's reduced in size, I'm gonna say about 75%.
What?
Still,
We do.
well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I said it wrong. 25%. It's 75%.
We're thinking of this little tiny.
Postage stamps.
So what you'll see is a brick frame essentially around it. It'll still be a substantial piece. But I think the fact that it wasn't going on the building, it was going on panels, made it seem like a picture mural, and people just couldn't get by that. Barbara did a very great job of presenting it, presenting our recommendations, but it did not fail. So, but the other good news is that they've raised almost all the money to be able to execute, so we should be able to see that soon. Ernie and I had a meeting with the nonprofit that's doing the rail trail. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. We met with them a couple of weeks ago to talk about the possibility of incorporating public art into the rail trail. And I think it was a good meeting, but they're pretty overwhelmed right now with other issues that are involved with the rail trail. So they're not eager at this point to start exploring that. But I guess the one thing that came out of it was that they are going to come up with some guidelines for public art on the rail trail.
We encourage them because we think that, art and rail trails around the country really are starting to go together, and that they needed to get ahead of this a little bit, and that we would be able to be helpful with it because people will be undoubtedly coming forth with proposals. And they have responsibility for the rail trail to Seabrook. So this is not only a Portsmouth nonprofit, and they do have an interest in seeing that there's a curated look throughout. Alyssa, I think.
I was just clarifying who they was in the.
Yeah, it's
They're a nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit set up for essentially the New Hampshire length of the rail trail. Kate?
I was on the rail trail last Wednesday and there's already some pretty substantial graffiti art that is there.
Yes.
So if they don't work quickly, there won't be very much left on those bridges.
Right. And we provided them some examples and some reasons, including to address graffiti for reasons why to get ahead a little bit with public art. At least I know a few years ago, there were people in the area, businesses who were interested in sponsoring public art for the rail trail. So that was another reason for us to talk to them about it, get it on their radar. There's a wonderful website that is a National Art and Rail Trails website that gives many, many examples. So there's a lot of guidance, a lot of help for this.
Do you know that website by any chance?
Just do rail trails and public art.
Okay.
Portsmouth Historical Society is moving forward with doing the sculpture tour using the public art archive. And they've also scheduled for July 29th a lecture that is going to be about the Cabot Lyford exhibit. And then Ernie and I have been invited to also talk about the work of this committee. Obviously, everybody's invited to come to that. It would be great to have people there. And then Nancy and Kate, I know you've had a follow-up meeting based on the presentation we had last time
Yes.
about Bon Mall.
Yes, so we met with the original stakeholder group for the LGBTQ public art project that's connected to that $10,000 originally for a crosswalk. We've now abandoned that for something different. And I shared Terrence's renderings and did my best to explain where the opportunities were for public art pieces. I showed them the projection wall and of course that glass panel. The general consensus from the group was they are really emotionally tied to this idea of the city of the open door. And they were trying to start to fit that concept into like the glass. And so we kind of steered them away from that because that's a whole different thing. It muddies the water, it complicates things, and it's not what the original vision was for those panels. So we're looking at a standalone piece that somehow aligns with the city of the open door. I then drafted what such a proposal might look like if we were to do a call to artists. I ran it by a couple people on the committee. That's what I need to show it to you, or did I already? I think I did. Maybe not. Okay, I showed it to Brad. Anyway, and I shared it with these two. I can hand it out after I run it by the rest of the committee. But they understand and are willing and prepared to fundraise for such a project. Seacoast Outright, Heidi at Seacoast Outright believes that she already has a funder who would step forward to like launch such a campaign. And my guess is that the fundraising could probably take place at the Seacoast Outright nonprofit, so we don't have to worry about that. They did have a series of questions. Terrence, I'm glad you're here. I'll just read them to you because I think what's going to end up happening is we're gonna probably ask for a site walk eventually. Knowing all the work that has to be done in that area, it's probably it's better to do it before that kicks off so we could see the whole space. So first question, can a standalone piece be integrated into this redesign so it doesn't look like it's something separate? The desire is it's to feel incorporated. So those are questions to go back and ask Terrence and his team. Second question, what might be the best location for such a piece? Third question is, does a sculpture override other elements in the area like colorful rainbow lighting, things like that, that might also indicate an LGBTQ friendly area? I think that's a conversation that we all need to have because it's one thing to have a sculpture and it's another thing to declare a whole area. So we kind of have to talk about that. And they wanted to know if there's anything preventing them from fundraising sooner rather than later. I shared that question with Chris and she replied the same way I was thinking, is that it would probably be best to have something more concrete with which to go to funders to fundraise rather than just an idea, and also an idea of what the idea is going to cost. So anyway, so those were the questions. That was the desire, and the update, dude, unless I.
No, that's actually pretty thorough, so.
So next steps sound like you want to do a site walk with them and with the city team.
Yeah, so that they can understand physically where things are going and where the DPW and Terrence might say this is where a standalone piece makes sense so that they can understand where something like that could live. and get a sense of scale as well, I think, so that they have a really good understanding. I would think that would be good.
And Nancy, do you have a sense that they have a general sense of how much these kinds of things cost or what representative things cost? I just want to make sure they're having a,
Did we talk about that?
I did mention to them
Yeah.
that the Chen piece was around 200,000
Yeah,
and
we
that they
did.
should prepare for
okay.
a pretty
Yeah.
serious expense. Yeah.
And that's when Heidi said, I have a funder already in mind who can kickstart that, so. Are there any questions?
Great.
Okay, so should we start with availability of DPW
I
and
think for Sean,
Terrence?
probably.
Go through maybe because.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The meetings and a public meeting planned for July 7th.
Oh, okay.
There's for public input on design.
Okay,
So
July
there's
7th.
there's things happening.
should we just direct the group to come to that meeting? Or is that a little bit, will they commandeer that meeting too much?
I'd imagine there's a lot. I mean, we're just getting, I think we're just getting started. I don't know. I'll defer to.
We are just getting started and
Just getting
I would
started.
ask you, Nancy, if you, is that group aware of the very many art opportunities that are designed into that space that I presented last time I was here?
I explained everything, the glass panels, the projection, the areas where you said,
Our art opportunities,
Yeah.
yes.
it was like five or eight.
Yes,
I
but
think.
it's one thing to say that and look at a piece of paper. And it's another thing to go into the space, see where you mean.
So those art opportunities are for this group to control, not for me. I'm just creating the opportunity for these opportunities.
Right, but
Five of which are video projections and another four were kind of physical sculptures. So there's plenty of room for.
yeah, I just think they need, they want to stand in the place and understand where.
Yes.
So that when they imagine their piece, they can imagine it in a place, not on a piece of paper.
Yeah, I would suggest that they should be part of the normal public process and not like catered to. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but I mean, we can't just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Focus on particular groups. It has to be part of the normal.
So
public
to answer your question, I think the more public meetings they can attend, the better. If
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
want to go to the
absolutely.
first one, that would give them that first big broad
Big
brush.
picture. I think that's
And
good.
it probably will prompt a lot more questions for them to bring to future
Yeah.
conversations. But that's what it's meant to be, is the first public meeting to share what.
And that I can find that online, send them the link.
6 o'clock, the Leveson Room, July 7th. Is it 6 o'clock, right? The Leveson
I
Room
don't
in the
know if it's on
library.
the website yet. but-
And that would be good for any of us to
Yep,
attend.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
It's,
Okay,
I was gonna mention that usually these events are fairly sparsely attended, to be honest.
Yeah.
Whenever we do design, unfortunately, it would be nice if we had a lot more people show up. So they should definitely show up. They should definitely share their voice. And ultimately, this group will decide. I mean, if we've decided that we're wanting to include them, then they will be included no matter what.
Yeah.
The decision is.
Yeah.
For, on the city side for.
yeah, there's no intention to exclude any particular group. So.
that's good. So that's a Monday night.
Monday
July
night,
7th.
July 7th. I think it was 6 o'clock.
That's at 6
It is
o'clock.
6 to 7:30. I will forward the invitations
Great.
apart.
Okay, great progress. Alyssa.
I guess I just wanted to mention that that doesn't all quite feel right, in that this was a money given to this group to control, and we assembled this stakeholder group, and I don't want to be on the impression that we're telling them, oh, well, just go participate in the public process and have it heard, because
So I think we'll continue to follow through with them, but
Yeah.
it's more to you have to be part of the public
Yeah,
process as
because
well
that
as come to us.
meeting that's not on site, and we're talking about bringing them to the site. So I'm just saying that it doesn't feel quite right that that's a supplemental, but not the.
Yeah, I think it's
Stuff.
supplemental. I think the suggestion is that come to this first and then do the site. I
It
mean,
just gives you the big picture so that then they can, I think, they'll walk out with more questions and more, right?
I mean, I do endorse the site, folks like Terrence who are designers can look at it 2D model and it all makes sense, but for most people, I think they need to get a sense of scale and understand it, they need to be on site.
Excuse me, Chris, at the 7/7 meeting, there will be a computer rendering of at least one angle. So it'll be kind of a glossy look at it.
I sat for 4 years on the planning board and even saw my fellow planning board members sometimes not be able to visualize, you know, how it's hard. So I think we do want to make sure we give the opportunity to have people on site. But 7th coming right up sounds like a good plan. And that'll also give people a sense of timeline. Because that's,
Timeline and variables, because there are going to be variables.
Oh, yeah.
When we're digging and then filling back in and then completing and then designing and then constructing the design or bringing it to life, right?
Right.
There'll be variables, so.
It's also really important to remember that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the people that show up get to influence what happens with the design ultimately. And that's always a challenge that we have at the city because not a lot of people show up for these meetings. So that, 20, 30 people that show up completely change and alter the planning that we do at the city level. And then other people are like, well, why did you do that? Well, you didn't show up for the meeting. So that's why it's critical that they show up because they might be the only voices in the room. Okay, first step, July 7th. Got it.
okay, good. All right. And then it's not on the agenda, but just a brief update from Ernie's and Street Life.
So, I think everybody knows August 13th, rain date, August 14th. The chamber is going to be having their big street life event in Bohenko Gateway Park. And we've been meeting with them. There'll be 350 to 400 people there, a big long table, eating outside, so it should be really nice. We've been meeting with the chamber because we really want to try to it's a great opportunity to get the public art message awareness out there. So we had another meeting today. We're planning to have the centerpieces, each table will be a different piece of public art in Portsmouth, and that's 50, we'll need 50 pieces. And we're figuring out how to incorporate that so it looks nice. And we'll have a handout that we'll give that'll just promote the catalog and give people a taste of public art, increase awareness. So I think that's about it.
Can you tell me the date again?
August 13th,
Okay.
rain date, August 14th. And I don't know if we're hoping to use this as an opportunity to launch, to announce the expansion in Bohenko Gateway Park and hopefully raise some funds because Ben Van Camp has been really generous. They don't raise money at this event. So he said, if you want to, he's happy to support raising funds for expansion of public art.
What's the time?
I think I'll have to check. I don't know if it's 5 or 6.
Usually 5 to 9, something like that.
Yeah.
5 or 6.
They haven't even announced it yet because, but
Right.
they've been waiting to get their main sponsor. But they'll announce it by July 1st. So it'll be live on that. So I think it'll be a really nice event. It's modeled like after the 400th event that was in the street. It's lobsters. So it should be fun.
I'm in the process of doing another round of updates to the inventory because there have been some changes. Has anyone heard anything about the bowsprit that was above Martingale Wharf? Because I know they took it down.
Well, it fell down.
Right, it fell down. Oh, yeah, and it broke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I may move that to historic for now. That's fine. And then Hearth obviously closed. We had a few pieces.
Yeah.
There, so I'll put that as historic. So we still capture them, but they'll be in a.
Yeah, I was wondering what's gonna happen to the pieces at Hearth that were.
We're on embedded, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And one said one is still outside and.
Yeah.
The art outside will
Yes, the
still be
outside,
there.
yes, but I was thinking the
Yeah.
inside one.
Yeah.
Inside pieces, yeah, Kate.
I believe there's still access I may be wrong, there's still access to that front lobby because that's the access point for the offices upstairs as well. So I think
That's true.
a lot of that artwork is still available.
That's a good point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that's where you take the elevator to go up, yes.
Yes.
I'll move the two from inside to the other.
Well, the inside, the ones that are, that are in the
Yeah.
Yeah,
physical
those
space,
I'll
yeah. But who knows, that might come back.
Thank you.
And I think Laura, you're on, you and Terrence are on.
I'm going to speak very briefly.
Come up to the table.
Oh, really? I'm going to speak very briefly because as the retired president of Friends of Ruth Blay, really, it is in Terrence's hands. Friends of Ruth Blay is a 501c3, and we are a group of devotees that came out of the original Portsmouth NH400 group before COVID. We learned of Ruth Blay's story and fell in love with it. Ruth Blay was the last woman who was hanged in the state of New Hampshire. She was hanged for the concealing of the death of her newborn child. We all became fans of her story before the Dobbs decision 3 years ago, so this is really close to our hearts. We formed after COVID, and in July of 2021, we launched the Ruth Blay mural on the corner of Terrence's building over on Court Street, and had grand designs to do similar public art across the city. It did not come to be. So we are here to hand off our resources. I want to personally thank Nancy and Robin for also being on the group of Friends of Ruth Blay, and for at least one substantial donor who is sitting at this table at this point. So I will turn this over to Terrence.
Yeah, so the other members of the Ruth Blay group were Nate Higgins, Trevor Bartlett, and Denise Wheeler.
Susan LeBrady, retired.
Susan LeBrie retired, and Laura Pope.
Yeah.
So it's a really good group of people, and we actually got two other murals built. One is on Liar's Bench, which is the Sarah Orne Jewett, and the other is yet to be installed at Maplewood in Deer. It's Tom Ballin who's paying for it. It's Rosa Fiandaca, who celebrates the North End and her influence as a community person in the North End.
Is there timing on that, Terrence? Do you know?
Well, yes, so there was timing, but it's all off.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So it was gonna be last week,
Oh,
but you know, because there's a transformer there and it's on a fence. And the transformer is subject to Eversource. So I don't know what the schedule is now. But we did come up with the tag of History Through Art, which is on the Ruth Blay mural.
great.
And it's on Rosa Fiandaca, and it's on
Sarah.
Sarah Orne Jewett. And the good news about Sarah Orne Jewett is that Liar's Bench is now running with it. They put the mural on a beer can. They want to have they did have a poetry contest in April, and they're going to have a continued poetry contest in her spirit. And and the winner gets their poem on beer label bottle of beer.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's really fun, but so it lives on,
It's
Great,
great.
lives on.
and hopefully the history of art will live on, that tag.
Yeah.
You know, but we were in the business of needing building owners and funds, and we didn't really have any building owners that really stepped up. My landlord, Todd Adelman, was paid for the Ruth Blay mural to so he was very generous on that count. But Laura Brown has
Cleared out the bank.
cleared out the bank. Right,
Yeah.
so this is a check to the city of Portsmouth of our remaining funds.
We're very grateful.
For
Yes.
your use and your
Yeah.
discretion.
So we'll put it in the Public Art Trust.
That's a good question. Those of us in this corner, I didn't get the Friends of Ruth Blay. That's what I thought you were saying about that. I didn't write it down fast enough and I thought I misheard. Okay, no,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
BLAY. And there was a book about Ruth Blay written by
Carolyn Marvin.
Carolyn Marvin, who was at the Athenaeum.
Still
And I'd make a plug for Anthony's sculptures on the tables you're talking about at Blanco Park. Anthony's a great sculptor. So I think we're done.
So
Oh,
Well, I think what we will do, we'll present it to the city council because we ourselves can't just take donations, and ask that it be put in the public art trust, which is great.
Did you, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you.
So much.
And Laura and Terrence, you were then sunsetting history through art?
We are, we're allowing everything to go into administrative dissolution, which means it can be resurrected at any point if it needs to be.
I see.
Or if we desire it to be, but we currently still hold history through art registrations in the state of New
it's a
Hampshire.
great tag, so
It
hopefully,
is a great tag. and I was going
hopefully
to
it
ask
exists in the
if you,
future.
for example, had the appropriate piece that we wanted to have it tagged with, that'd be something that we would just,
Yeah, and
Check with you.
we're
I'll
pretty,
speak for both of us. We'd love for it to live on.
yeah, we would, yeah, absolutely, so.
Yeah.
But we would like to see it first.
Yeah. Yeah, we had some suggestions over the years that, yeah, but, yeah. we would
I don't
love
know,
to see
the
it.
judges will have that tag, and by the way, the early work we did was we guided the Black Heritage Group into how to go through the city process, because we had done that, because at the time murals were regarded as signs, so it was a really kind of an awkward process through the Board of Adjustment and the HDC. So we guided them through that, but
Yeah.
that was it.
well, I think we might ask that they could consider using that tag. They have a plan for the signage that will be on the front of their building, so it doesn't interfere with the mural.
Oh,
So they have
okay, great
plenty-
use of the tag.
They have
But
plenty
yeah,
of space.
And,
Yeah.
and we have artwork already done up for it and colors and logo
That's
and
great.
everything, so
Yeah.
it's ready to go.
Yeah, did that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So.
So now we have Anthony. Do you want to come and sit at the?
Sure. Thank you, Terrence, for the shout out.
My pleasure.
And so, our intention was always to expand the public art in Bohenko Gateway Park. And we decided to consider the finalists from the Endeavor project. Since those concepts have been carefully vetted by the review team, which Lenny was on. And wouldn't have to go through another RFP. So at the May meeting, just remind everybody, we met in non-public session to discuss that. And at that meeting, the decision was made to invite Anthony back to share his concept. And we could have a formal vote on that. And Anthony will tell you about himself, but he's a local artist, and his design celebrates our Native American history, the Abenaki people. During the discussion, your design was very well received. So I think everybody's really looking forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you very much, Ernie, and for everyone present. This is an honor to be here to present myself. Do you have,
Pull one up?
please, if you got slides.
You sent me a few. so-
Yeah. I sent the PowerPoint, but it was 17 megabytes, and usually you
Oh.
can't email that big, so I put it in a Google Drive, but also put it in a PDF.
So,
Well,
Looks like.
perfect. Now, is this broadcast live?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
It isn't live, but it is being recorded and
Okay.
will be posted.
Available on the website and
Yeah.
the city website.
Okay, because I have some images in here that are still confidential with some of my clients.
so I'm not sharing the screen.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
That's good, right?
That's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is for my concept, Nabi, which is the Algonquin word for water. But first, a little about myself. You could, do you want me to do it?
That's all right.
My name's Anthony Alamany. I'm a figurative sculptor. I live in South Berwick. I teach at Sanctuary Arts. I graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design with a BFA in art, and I also studied at the Florence Academy of Art. If you could go to the next one, please. This is Lenny might recognize this person. I do demos, public demos, demonstrations, teach classes and workshops, and this was a demo I did at the Barn Gallery in Agunquit. These are some commissions that I've done. some portraits and torso bust of some work that I've completed. Most of the work I do in bronze. Here's a piece of at Alnoba. Alan Lewis unfortunately passed away a few years ago, and Harriet hired me to sculpt his portrait class. And up in Bangor, Maine, I was hired by the Cole Land Transportation Museum to sculpt a former mayor and World War II veteran, Galen Cole. That was the maquette study for the composition of the piece. You could go to the next slide. And this was the finished piece with Galen Cole's daughter. So that was a great time to be able to celebrate his life.
And where is that located?
It's in Bangor, Maine, at
And
the
in what kind
Cole,
of facility?
the Cole Land Transportation Museum. It's an incredible place if you've never been. They have basically cataloged vehicles, fire trucks, trains, all through American history. So he was a World War II veteran and passionate about military equipment and vehicles and such. This project is confidential. It's for an 87-foot long fountain going into Cambridge, and I was subcontracted by Crystal Fountains and the Green Foundry. So this was their initial concept. And then the next slide is my maquette study, which I did several of them. They approved it. And the next slide, please. This was in Toronto, Canada, where it was tested for water flow and lights and fog. And so these are different samples, and they've selected one, and that project's going to be completed in 2027.
So talk to us a little bit how it works, where the water is.
Oh, yeah, a lot of those logistics was done by Crystal Fountains, but I sculpted the piece and then Green Foundry cast them in bronze. And so it's a collaborative piece where I'm going to be making the sculpture in the mold, and they're going to be casting it in bronze. And it's going to, like I said, installed at 2 new buildings that's going to be built in Cambridge. They've already
So is the water flowing or is it?
Yes, the
mist?
water's flowing. It was too big to send a video, but the water's flowing, the light can be controlled, and they were running tests. So this is a sample piece, but the fountain itself is going to be 87 feet long, wrapping around like an L. And then the next slide, please. This is another confidential commission that is an ongoing commission with Sean Samarashingi. He is he's a Renaissance man of so many ways, but he's also a clockmaker, and he's launching a high-end clock company, and I think that's probably all I can say. But this is a figure that I've sculpted and with his clock design on it, so that was a collaborative piece. And there's a few more slides of some more work that I've done for him. So these are recent works that I've done in the past couple of years, and I can't talk about it. So I know Ernie asked me to bring some recent works. And there's another one.
Size of those?
These are about tabletop size. The figure you saw was 1/3 scale, so it was about 30 inches tall. This is a personal project that I'm working on. It's a half-life size figure that's going to be promoted as a garden torch. In the next slide, that's the clay ready for bronze. And there's the bronze. It was just cast the other day, and I was at the foundry helping. It was 100 degrees outside, but inside it was 135 degrees. So I might feel a little dizzy or a little, so if I look off, that's next slide. And this is a piece that I'm still sculpting that's currently in the works. So when I'm not working on commission pieces, I'm working on works that are going to galleries. I'm also represented by the Bowersock Gallery in Provincetown, Massachusetts. Yeah. And so this is a half-life size figure of a column of a dryad that's still in progress. So it's still in play. Right, and some small works like a green man and a door knocker. Yeah, really popular. Next one. And more traditional mythological type work, fountains and flower pots and vases and such. All right, so continuing with my concept of Nabi, I spoke with the Kawasuk band of Pennacook Abenaki. I'm sure many of you know Paul and Denise Poulier. And so I met with them a few weeks ago and got their blessing on the project, talked with them about the concept, and they're going to work with me throughout the whole process, guiding me in the symbology, making sure that it's respectful of the Wabanaki people, and every step of the way. So as I sculpt the maquette, I'm going to bring it to them. They've already given me some input. This was my initial concept that I submitted. And Ernie, this was a sort of cleaned up version of the drawing. I can send it to you.
It's good.
And after meeting with Denise and Paul, this is the sort of the updated one. And I made some changes for a few reasons. I'll talk about those here shortly. But this is the concept Nebi. And Nebi means water in the Algonquin language. And it honors the Abenaki people from the Abenaki all through generations of fishermen, black mariners, and naval workers. Because before anyone stepped foot on this land, for over 10,000 years before that, the Wabanaki people have inhabited this land. So the purpose of this sculpture is to draw the viewer in, to contemplate and honor the memory and of the continued habitation of the land of the Wabanaki people. The central figure is Nabine in Wabanaki lore, and she represents summer. She's the personification of summer, and she's holding an Abenaki water vessel, making an offering of water. And flowing from her spirit and her hair is a great eagle, reaching up, touching a ring that represents Pesos, which in Abenaki and the Algonquin language means the sun, but also means the full moon. And in their lore, eagles, there's several eagles. One of them directs the wind, and another one, as it flaps its wings, signifies the closing and opening of the day, the sunset and the sunrise.
We'll have to talk to that eagle about the wind. That's been causing a lot of trouble down there.
And so the proposed materials would be bronze, silicon bronze specifically, because that's the superior version of bronze that's out there for public art. And I propose that it be cast at the Green Foundry. I have a great working relationship with them, as I know Terrence does as well, and a lot of other sculptors in the area. And they've done a number of public art pieces in the area down through Massachusetts, New York, and even the Hope sculpture that was done by Barack Obama, for Barack Obama's inauguration, that was done by the Green Foundry. And why bronze? Well, because bronze is timeless. And for me as a sculptor, it's very special to me. And I think it's very much related to this project. When I explained it to Paul and Denise, they were really excited. Bronze is a timeless material. We still have statues from thousands of years ago. And I love all forms of art, and I draw and paint myself as well. And, drawings will fade, paintings will crumble and wither away, but bronze can last for thousands of years. And so for me, it feels fitting because the Wabanaki people have lived on this land for over 10,000 years, and making a piece, this concept, Nebi, to put it in a romantic and timeless material like bronze shows that the Wabanaki people have been here and will continue to live on for thousands of more years, in my mind anyway, if we're here. And if you continue, as I walked through Bohinco Gateway Park, this was a location that I thought looked fitting. And of course, I'm open to working with all of you and identifying a location. At this specific spot, there's benches looking back. This is viewing from the location. There's a few benches for seating. And this is a visualization of the piece, approximately to scale of where it could fit. And the sculpture itself is 9 feet tall, and the ring is 30 inches in diameter. And she's going to be resting on a piece of granite, like a circular granite stone. And if you could go to the next slide, please. I know Ernie asked me to bring some estimates and numbers of site prep. And in commissions that I've worked in the past, and as a member of the National Sculpture Society, where I'm connected with a lot of other sculptors, a lot of them have advised me that the cities and towns usually handle that, because you have access to engineers, contractors. You can acquire the permits much more easily than a humble artist who gets his hands in clay all day. But I did reach out to several groups of people, heard back from some of them. Summit Engineering gave me an estimate just to design the footprint and anchoring. They said it would be around $6,000. I also reached out at Terrence's recommendation to Alex Ross for Ross Engineering, and he didn't give me an estimate of how much it would cost. He explained that they have to do a complex series of calculations which is a lot of work to figure out how much it's gonna cost, and I haven't hired him for that yet, so he can't give me that information. But based upon what I sent him and expressed that this was still confidential, that this, he recommended putting a poured foundation 4 feet below grade with a concrete pier that rises up so that the sculpture could be seated or epoxied in place into the pier using 6 to 8 1-inch stainless steel rods that would go 24 inches into the pier. That way it would account for wind sail, the weight, and the height to make sure that it's safe so it doesn't fall over on anybody. And this is subject to change because he hasn't run the numbers. This was just his guess. And the sculpture is going to weigh between 400, possibly 450 pounds. And that's, like I said, the site prep. Next slide, please. This is a close-up of how it would function. As you notice, I altered the design where Nabeen is standing on a turtle shell.
yeah.
And talking with Paul and Denise, they say in Indian country, the turtle shell represents Mother Earth, where we are all walking on the great turtle. And so putting her on the shell does several things. One, it honors Wabanaki tradition. Two, it also makes it easier for the engineers to design footing. Because if she was standing directly on the stone with 2 feet, it would be a much more complex design to anchor her safely. So having her permanently fixed as one object with the shell welded in place, the shell can have 6 to 8 anchor points. And like I said, at the same time, it would still honor that Wabanaki lore. And that's the end of that presentation. Thank you. Just some closing remarks. My concept, Nebi, is not meant to be didactic, but instead it offers a symbolic and emotional presence that invites viewers to reflect on the people that have lived here before. It honors Indigenous heritage and local history, and it honors our relationship to nature and our place. So thank you all for your time.
Question.
Yes, questions?
Beautiful.
No, thank you.
I have a question about the finish.
Okay.
And I noticed that in the piece that you, that had just been cast, it had a lighter finish than I think of as many of our outdoor bronzes. Now, I know that changes with weather, but I wonder about that partly just for visibility. So we talk a little bit about the finish thing.
Yeah, bronze is patinaed with various chemicals. The composition of bronze is about 98% copper. It's also got silicon, manganese, and small traces of lead and zinc. And this this alloy is very versatile because it's durable, it's strong, it's easy to repair, and again, like I said, it's timeless. But the patina is basically like what would be the equivalent of rust oxidization on the surface, which can be guided by the use of chemicals. Patinas, bronze, because it's mostly copper, over time, if it's not maintained annually, will eventually turn green, kind of like the Statue of Liberty or the beautiful sculptures in Boston Commons. But a lighter patina is possible, but again, like you said, over time it's gonna change. The great thing about the sculpture being outside is that traditional patinas will look lighter or have the potential to look lighter. And with
Or could I,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
reading
Go ahead.
this. Following through with the patina
Mhm.
question, is there a way to make it so that if somebody doesn't go up and touch it, to make it that if
Oh,
someone
yeah.
touches it, it doesn't get handprints all over it? Because actually I give tours at El Novo
Mhm.
and I know that at least one of their pieces
right.
has a kind of a surface that basically has been ruined by humans putting their hands on it, whereas some of their bronzes don't because of the
Yes.
kind of patina, and a park that's out in the public where no one is leasing it. It would be great if people could touch it without ruining it. Is that a possibility? Or, I mean, I don't know anything about
Sure,
patinas. I just
sure.
know that they're
And
different
that's a
ones.
great question because the patina and the finish can be rubbed off as people touch, and you can't always control that. There could be some type of a barrier, perhaps if the stone was larger, then it was harder to reach if that was a desire. But in some local settings, it's kind of fun to see how people touch patinas. Yeah.
Really animal sculptures,
Rub the nose.
yeah, the nose or the good boy, you know, and so
The,
you kind of.
the figures at the African Burying Ground are waxed every few
Mhm.
years, so you'll
Yes.
notice that that has protected them.
And those are touched constantly.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, technically how that can be achieved, a lacquer finish in multiple coats can be applied and then later wax. And annually, as Chris was commenting on, it can be washed with mild soap and water such as Dawn and non-toxic soaps.
Thinking of this one where
Right.
had a kind of patina that it was very shiny and very alluring,
Mhm.
but it has handprints on it, which,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's not, it's the
Right.
ones, there are many that don't, so obviously you can.
Yeah, and a lot of the sculptors that I know and also myself go to help maintain the sculptures that
Good.
are cast on an annual basis,
That's
like with a maintenance schedule.
Yeah. Right, and I think that something, I mean, my own personal feelings, that something that's that public shouldn't, it shouldn't, touching it shouldn't be a no-no. It should be
Correct.
something
Yes.
that
I agree.
Yes.
invites interaction.
That's the way I feel about sculpture, and I have to watch myself when I go to museums because security cards. It's looking up the skirts of sculptures and behind their ears to see how they're made and sometimes touching them. Yeah, it's behind my back.
Okay.
So I know that there's also the possibility of doing a kind of a pre-aging of like creating a patina so that maybe you prevent some of the fingerprints that are an issue. Is that something that's a possibility or that you'd even be interested in?
Well, yes, so the patina is kind of that pre-aging, or are you talking about like rubbing it off where you think people would touch it?
No, I know that there's a chemical process where you can pre-age it so it turns green.
Yeah, that is the patina process. So
Okay.
there's a number of colors, and if you remember from some of my slides, some of them were green because I patinaed them to be green. Some of them are black or darker. And the various patinas are different. So like green is a thin film that appears on the sculpture, but ferric nitrate or some of the darker patinas, they almost etch into the surface and are a little bit stronger. That's a good question. Yes.
Beth, and then we'll do.
Okay.
Anthony, I had a question about the container itself.
Yes.
Is that hollow, so it would be actually catching water
Yeah.
and no, and, okay,
Yeah, so that was part of my initial concept
it
was
was
to,
bigger, right?
was that it was bigger, but after talking with Denise and Paul, they wanted me to use a traditional vessel. I wasn't 100% sure what that looked like, so I just pulled that. Virtually, this whole design was sort of from my imagination. And and Denise said that I got most of it right except for the vessel, so I changed that. She sent me that, or she's going to send me hundreds of images of pottery shards, designs, Wabanaki designs, and everything's gonna be related to water, even the shell necklace.
Laura, if Laura was gonna ask a question, then Linda.
Big part.
Yeah.
Have you incorporated into your planning the requirement to work with the state archaeologist?
I have,
Digging down to create the foundation for this?
I have not.
That would be a city,
Okay.
a city issue where we have identified where they need to, the city knows where they need to. Lenny?
Back to the vessel,
Yes.
which that's very cool that, you were informed. Got the information, from the Wabanaki people. If it's intended that it can fill with snow or water, like how might that, during say a freezing season, how might would that affect?
It's bronze, it's very durable, it's not gonna affect the sculpture at all. I do have the desire that it could be a fountain. But I've gotta figure out from like what's required to make sort of a retaining area for water so that it could easily be turned into a fountain. Sculpturally, it wouldn't be any additional cost. But as far as site prep, that would be more.
Right, and also note our weather is not as friendly to fountains as. So that's
Right
come
there.
up frequently when people raise that as a possibility.
So I guess just to finish off on the weight, like if it's filled with, say, water, which turns to ice in the winter, because her arms are reaching forward and the face is tipping a little, I just wondered if they added weight.
We could all stand on that and wouldn't move.
Timeline, or Robin?
I just have one quick question, and you might have gone through this, but I was
Okay,
also trying to take notes. The base looks like a turtle shell or a
Yes.
tortoise shell, and that's very prominent in Abenaki culture as
Yeah,
well.
and not only in Abenaki culture, but in all indigenous cultures, because the belief is that Mother Earth for them is the back of a turtle shell.
Exactly,
Uh,
right.
which in physics, you hear that it's turtles all the way down. When they go and investigate things scientifically, it's the whole concept that, the universe is being held up by turtles. In Greek mythology, Atlas was holding up the sky and so on and so forth. So that's part of the lore.
So talk to us about timeline from when we'd be able to do a go-ahead to. like,
Okay.
what you can.
Right,
yes.
yeah, the first step in my process is to sculpt a to scale maquette, which I would like to sculpt at 1/3 scale, which would be a 3 foot tall sculpture, and the figure would be about this tall. And that's a chance to, in 3 dimensions, as we were talking about earlier, it is hard for people to visualize 3-dimensionally, which is why doing a scale maquette allows us to work out the design. And it would also allow input from the committee and input from Paul and Denise, so that once that's finalized, that usually takes 6 to 8 weeks.
And also help with fundraising. I think,
Yeah.
that people can actually see. Um,
And I budgeted that step of the process to be $2,500. That's typically what sculptors charge to do a maquette or a simple maquette like that, like this piece. And that if you give me the go ahead to do that, I can get started on that right away if this is approved, and that could be used for fundraising. I can make a mold of it and do a casting so people can see it physically, what it's going to look like to scale.
And then?
And then, once the maquette is approved, I can begin sculpting the enlarged version, which would take 4 to 6 months to sculpt. Mhm. And after the enlarged version is created, oh, do you have a question, Brittany?
well, I was just thinking with the August 13th event, that would be just 6 weeks, but so that
Well,
might,
that's still not done yet. That's just my part of the process of sculpting.
yeah.
And then once the sculpture is, the final enlarged sculpture is approved, then the mold making process would begin. And that, for a sculpture this size, could take 2 to 3 weeks to make the mold. And then that mold would be given to the Green Foundry, and then they would need 4 to 6 months to cast it. So you're looking at approximately a year or maybe a little longer. And I've broken it down so that initially I would receive a deposit, and at every step of those phases from every step of approval, the next phase would begin with that installment, so that phase can be paid for, and then that gives you a chance to fundraise in pieces as opposed to the whole thing.
And this is probably a good point to say it's all based on our raising the money to fund this, which Anthony knows and
Mhm.
we've talked about a lot, and we have a group that's meeting to work on fundraising.
So, just to give people sense of timeline, because we sought some advice from the deputy city manager and legal department about when should we bring this to the council? Because of course, we have to have their approval for the site, their approval for the piece. And we didn't want to wait too long for that, nor do we want to have to do it in multiple times. So the advice was in July, at the July meeting, that to bring it to the council in principle. Anthony is available to do that. Ernie will help with that, to be able to seek the council's approval for both the piece and the location in Bohenkel Park, essentially blessing our fundraising effort. And then it really is our committee work going ahead. So that was the advice, to do it sooner rather than later, which I think is great. And that basically then we've done it once, and we'll be able to authorize expenditures as they go, as we raise money to put in the trust. So that's kind of the timing here. But other questions or other observations or thoughts. One thing I know, several people who saw your design earlier thought, because of the water, wouldn't it be great to have it close to the water?
Yes.
But we understand also it has to do with the bearing has to be appropriate and so
Correct.
engineering. How do you feel about that? Would you prefer it to be closer to the water? I noticed you didn't necessarily have it close to the water.
Right, I didn't think that I didn't know if it could be close to the
Yeah.
water, so for the initial visualization, I put it where I put it, but I would love for it to be closer to the water if that's possible. I also understand that's probably gonna be a lot more expensive. So that's gonna depend on the evaluation of the structural engineer.
Right.
Soil samples. And for the picture.
Okay,
What do we estimate is the total cost? I think that's something that the council will probably ask.
yes.
It's 123,000
Yeah.
and I think
I included a $12,000 site prep estimation, but that may be low depending on engineers. Engineers that I've talked to in the past charged for the kind of sculptures that I do usually $1,500 to do a quick design and sign off, maybe even 2,000. But I've been hearing that some of the engineers for that, probably because of the area, we're gonna require about 6,000. That was the estimate I got from Summit Engineering. So
The estimate for the Ferry House sculpture, which weighs nothing like this, and is a smaller piece, was 2,500. Similar thing, 4-foot trench, granite base. So that what you received seems very reasonable.
Right.
And that includes the 2,500 as well. That
Uh,
125,000 or.
yes, I've spoken to a few structural engineers, but I would recommend you all who might have a better connection with local engineers of finding someone who might want to work on this project. Maybe perhaps find something that's a little bit more achievable.
There's also the possibility we need to meet with DPW. There's possibility of DPW doing some of the site preparation.
Well, we'd still have to pay for it.
Yes, exactly, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And just like the piece on the Pierce Island, there's a collaborative support there from DPW, but the large chunk of money is something we're paying for. I wouldn't do it at this meeting, but maybe at the next meeting one thing, Sean and I talked about following our Pierce Island experiences, that perhaps we, meaning Park, should use our funds for engineering study for any placement, not the installation, but the engineering study, just so then the installers and the artists know what's ahead of them. And that might be a precursor thing that we would take funds from the trust fund. And that wouldn't be a cost to this sculpture, but would be provide some information. So there's no guesswork, because we found ourselves with the Pierce Island sculpture needing to guess as we went to contract, and that was great.
now how expensive was that project? Burying the foundation.
Well, they're assuming all of that work within the total.
Yeah.
So,
And they even paid for an engineering to come out and check the soil to see what
Right.
was under the ground. So that was at their expense.
Anthony, this is a project on Pierce Island,
Mhm.
the one that's getting installed in July.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking, being near a riverbank, that was my thought is
Yeah.
looking at close-ups of the underground piece, like,
Right.
what's that soil like? Is it bedrock? Is it clay? I mean.
Exactly.
that's the value of doing that study in advance, so I think.
And
I
that's
mean, we do have the studies from Endeavor.
Sure.
They did extensive research, so
Right,
I mean, my hope is that we can,
Yeah, it's the same size.
take a look at those
that's
and
good.
get an idea. I don't know how much, but they looked at a few different sites, so,
Great.
and I think that was Alex Ross.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what Terrence had told me.
Okay,
Um,
Yeah,
And again, like all of that could be subject to change. Hopefully, he still has that soil information. And I heard that Endeavor was quite heavy.
I think it was
Yes,
2 tons.
Yeah, very,
Yeah.
very heavy. So I expect that this foundation is not gonna need to be as strong. And with it being eagle's wings and an open ring at the top, I don't imagine the wind sail would be as strong as if it was a solid piece. And again, the weight's only 450 pounds roughly. So I don't know. That's all tentative,
and
depending on the.
also in reviewing the wind studies for the Pierce Island piece, it is that the river is rated at hurricane force from an engineering perspective, so that's an important thing to
Of
consider.
course, and as long as the engineers can design the foundation and the footing adequately so that it can hold the sculpture during all those conditions, the bronze sculpture itself will survive. Mhm. Any other questions? I do have a breakdown of the estimate. I don't know if I have enough for everyone, but I can email that to Ernie and have a few copies if anyone would like to.
Yeah. Is that the same one I have, or?
I believe so. I just added a couple of updates, mostly that the research for site prep is still ongoing.
Again.
So we should have a motion to move forward to present to the city council the Nabi sculpture as the next sculpture for Vehicle Park.
Yep. Oh, do we have to mention subject to fundraising or
Well, subject to fundraising,
Um,
yes.
in the motion, do you think we?
I think that's useful.
Yeah.
I second.
Any questions? What questions? All in favor? Aye. Okay, we look forward to this.
Yeah, it's wonderful. That's. Did you have notes you could share? Cause just some of the things you were saying will be so helpful with the fundraising, the birthing.
I have
Beautiful. You could be a writer.
I have a Bohinco Gateway Park sculpture proposal.
Okay, so I have that.
Yeah, I'll send you an updated one
Okay.
and I can reach out to me if there's anything specific you want to address in a certain context. I can try to write it up for you.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Okay.
I want to say,
Yes.
I really appreciate that you went back to Wabanaki folks for advice and consultation on, on elements that somebody who wasn't of the culture wouldn't recognize, but it would be really unfortunate for us to fund something that was like tone
Right.
deaf.
No, I agree 100%. And that's why when Denise and Paul said, well, what else can we do for you? I said, really, I'm here for your blessing. If you tell me not to do this, I don't want to do it. And they said, no, we love this.
Great.
And they said they're going to be with me every step of the way.
They're really great people.
Denise and Paul can also make some suggestions for fundraising, because they're both very good at that. Yeah.
In touch.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's great.
Okay. So next we have this request that has been sent to us for the Connie Bean display, I'll call it. And who did not have a chance to read this in advance? I have some copies. Nancy, Kate,
It's very long.
My printer was.
yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody else need a copy that you want to refer to? Lenny?
Yeah.
But I did read it.
I did read it, but
Conclusion
I
of the
wasn't going to-
pages.
I wanted to get the appendix.
Pages.
Last week, so I may have.
I just.
Just a couple of pages.
Anybody else need a copy to refer to?
Not voting.
So this has come to us, and Ernie and I had discussed it. We're a little perplexed about what to do with it. And you want to put up our typical criteria. One of our, I think, initial reactions is that this really isn't a work of public art. But you know, we need the committee to discuss this as well. So,
Can you explain why it's not?
well,
public art?
they
Because the
describe it as a display. It's a display of largely text, some posters, some artifacts, and that it doesn't, it doesn't, it's in a public building. It doesn't feel as much like an original work of art as it does a collection of elements that are a display. Yes,
So
please.
this came in to the rec center, to the rec
Oh.
department. And was proposed to them, and they're like. And the phrase public art came up, which very quickly gets it over here.
Right.
And it looked similar to, I'll say, the loss piece where it was a donation and a sighting and all, and then we had the Spinnaker one, we had the.
Right. Judy
So
Schubert,
we
yeah.
started getting these things that in my mind were coming in as donations, which we have to deal with as a city, and then
Yes.
public art. And those are actually two different processes, right? They're two different approval things. So that's how it got here. It came into the rec center. Someone made a proposal, offered to donate everything. And so we got here. So
So, yes, there is
a mural, right?
the mural of the Connie Bean facade.
Yes.
Yes, has an art element, is the art element.
So I talked to Seal because we're on another committee together, and she said, you know, what should I do? And I said, well, write a proposal. I didn't know all of the pieces before reading it today also. But, well, I mean, if what you're saying is we don't really need to.
Well, I
make
don't
a judgment
know.
on it because what she says, it's being funded not by they're not looking for fundraising. They're not looking for help, really. They just want approval.
Yeah.
They would need, right?
So from that standpoint, it is a donation,
It's a
which the city will
donation.
have to
Deal with
process.
as a donation.
Right. And then the question is it, does it,
Does it rise to
is
the
it public
criteria?
art?
I'm sure it does. It seems more like something that would be presented to the city council maybe, or the middle school is part of the Connie Bean, or is there a Connie Bean, like, do they have a board? Should it be presented to their board?
But it's a school board building.
Well, it's a city,
The
and
rec
they
building.
want it in a city building, so therefore it becomes a donation. And then that process of a donation and how it needs to be displayed. So I used to get calls prior to park and all these things, like, hey, I got this thing, I want it to happen. I want to give it to the city. Oh, and by the way, I'd like it hung,
Yeah.
right there. And so I just got guidance from the former deputy city manager. If someone wants to make a donation, that's fine. If someone has requirements on it, that's not as fine.
Yeah.
Because we could get donations every day and have to own them and deal with them and maintain them.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as, which is why the donation policy, I'm looking at Council Cook, was kind of updated to say, we need to understand this donation situation. How do we want to respond
Yeah.
to generous people?
Right.
Even if it's to say, no, thank you.
Yeah, Kate and then Nancy.
So, I guess my real question around this is it looks more like a historical exhibit rather than just rather than an art piece per se.
Exhibit, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the questions I really have is that there's a quote on the front that acts like the Connie Bean doesn't exist anymore. We still have a Connie Bean Community Center. We just moved it. So it's a little confusing, I would say. It maybe isn't in the same building it used to be in, but it's in a brand new fancy space. So
Nancy?
There is a whole page dedicated to installation as if it were an art work. There's the process, the wall prep, the paints, the ceiling. So it feels like it's something that we could look at with our blessing and then explain that it's not public art, but the way they're installing it has art elements to it that we recognize, but we're not evaluating it as a work of art. I mean, I still think we can look at it and give it a blessing, like it will be installed, it won't fall off the wall, it won't peel off the whatever. I mean, we'll have to look at it. But that part of it seems like we can look at that. It's on page 12.
But would we also have to like understand what that muralist had done elsewhere and, you know, do we run it through all our criteria?
And she has some of that.
She does have some of that. Yeah. And yes.
This feels like this just feels temporary to me. It doesn't feel like a permanent thing. That's why, am I missing something?
Well, they're painting it on the wall.
But it doesn't seem like, oh, it doesn't seem like permanent art to me. That's why it just seems more temporary and
Like an exhibit or a display.
exactly, it does, it's like, okay, here's a great exhibit. But
Mara?
I think, I mean, I guess it struck me that what they wanted to do with it, but I may be wrong, is that, you know, it's the part that's, I mean, exhibit or installation, that it is a way of permanently honoring and recognizing and bringing Connie Bean's achievements into the consciousness of people who use that facility. I mean, and into the public space, you know, into a public space in Portsmouth.
In which case, it again speaks to it being a historic exhibit, I think, using the words that.
Yeah, an exhibit or an installation, but not like an installation art piece.
Right, because, you know, frankly, it just does not have an aesthetic coherence that would meet our criteria. And so it, you know, as a historic piece, sure, it's like an exhibit in a history museum, but it doesn't have the qualities, aesthetic qualities of coherent art.
Who would give them approval to do this?
Well,
That's a good question.
If it's not us, then
Well, it
can
becomes,
we?
I'll just say it becomes a donation, and I think then city council has the ability to accept
Okay.
or not, or accept with guidance to city staff
Right.
to do whatever, report back or accept or facilitate, or I'm just
Yeah.
imagining. It just doesn't cut. It just wouldn't come with a park. Recommendation.
Imprimatur, yeah.
It doesn't have that piece.
And I would just say, like, in thinking about the audience who uses that space, that it's mostly kids, right?
Right.
K through 12.
K-12.
And it seems almost like something that's geared for the person, you know, for the family, rather than the audience of that space. I mean, is that okay? Or
I'll just say you do have a lot of families and all ages in.
There's adults that use that space
Yeah,
quite a
yeah,
bit too.
it's
It's not just
only,
kids.
to make a point, it's not only.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Well, that was why we funded it, but I understand.
It's also our polling center for
Yeah.
Ward 2.
Yes, so adults go there, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other concern I have, and why I think the council needs to look at it, is I think it sets a precedent where, you know, do we take any city employee and a family wants to take that wall and have it be the Sean Clancy wall?
Yes, I'll vote for yes.
You know, it feels like we can't make that determination. I think the city needs to have some guidelines about, I know there are guidelines about the naming of buildings, for example, but this is yet another new area that I don't believe has been tackled before.
Maybe they need a guideline for when a building's named after someone, how that person is honored, you know, like what,
Good idea.
Before,
you know.
Beforehand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. You've got the name.
But it's really useful to understand, I mean, I think for both kids and it's really useful to understand the history of people's impact on a community. It's really, you know, so, you know, you hear Connie Bean, okay, so who's Connie Bean? Why is it the Connie Bean
Right.
Center? You know, for someone who didn't know who she was back then, it's it's a useful thing to encounter.
Like the Sarah Long.
Yeah, why is?
Sarah Long?
That's right. Interesting.
Sounds
they
like
were-
it's a
they-
history thing.
They were both administrative assistants. It's
Mhm.
very interesting.
But isn't that interesting? Administrative assistants have a lot of.
Okay,
As we worked last year for a considerable amount of time on a new donation policy for the city, and this would be an opportunity to kind of
try it out.
look at that donation policy, because there were clauses in it about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, but, and so the city council could look at this. The one thing that I'll say though is the city council might look at this and say, it's gonna be painted on a wall, then it's a mural, let's send it to Park. So if that, I think it would be helpful if Park at least had an accompanying letter and said, we looked at this and we
Yeah.
decided it wasn't
agreed.
art or.
Right, that's the process.
Yeah.
It is very busy. I
Yeah.
don't know if we weigh in on, but either we weigh in or we don't, right? Or we say we're only weighing in on the mural. I mean, there's a lot going on.
O'Leary, an employee of the city. I know she works
No, I don't think
at
so.
the senior center. She organizes the art exhibits there.
It's, I think she is a volunteer there.
She's
sounds like,
volunteer.
yeah.
She says she teaches
Yes,
watercolors there, but I know I get emails from her saying we're gonna have an exhibit, which is just.
Notice.
So based on, is it fair to say that we would do a memo that suggests we believe this should be treated as a donation, not as a work of art appropriate for park review? We have raised, we see it as a historical exhibit and display. But we don't think that it has the aesthetic coherence of a work of art. We have no question about the quality of the people who have been recommended.
I think just referring to the
Yeah.
criteria, just to go through the process from A to Z, from Park to then
Yeah.
move it along to inform. Cause I don't know what city council will do with it.
Yeah.
So it came into rec, it made its way here. It's gonna go to city council, where it goes from there. we'll see.
And then we would recommend also that the council consider further guidelines for honoring city employees or honoring the people whose buildings carry the name. Does that work for everybody? Thank you.
But following up what he said, should we weigh in on the mural part since that is, or can we say that since it's only a part, a piece of a whole? I mean, there's.
Well, the mural is
which
really-
They're proposing, and then there's the.
The
tribute-
posters and
The
the,
posters and the tributes to Connie Bean and all that.
I wonder if we could reclassify it as a backdrop and not a mural. Well,
well, because it isn't a full mural, it would, yeah, you're right.
it's a backdrop to showcase these elements.
Exhibit.
Yeah.
Right, but I don't think of it, I don't think. If there wasn't the word mural in here, it wouldn't have come to us.
They should take out, maybe they take out the word mural.
Would we also want to consider recommending that they consider the process used for like Ruth Blaze so that they do not need to paint directly on the wall? That they could use it as a printed.
It sounds like they were using that anyway, Alpha Graphics.
Well,
For the.
that's the text,
Right.
poster art and
Right,
text.
but like the whole thing could be like that's what you're saying.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Alpha Graphics could do them.
Including the
Painted,
colors?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
No, I mean, I actually, I think that the painted columns with it's illusionistic, it's aesthetically appealing. But it's just one little piece.
It's a piece.
Right.
I think we could comment on that it makes a frame,
Yeah, the frame is really nice.
whatever they,
It's
plan to
cohesive,
do.
it's.
Yeah, we don't want to sound snotty.
Right. And I don't think any of us have any
None of us are.
quarrel with any of the
No.
qualifications of the folks that have been recommended. All right, I'll try to fashion something that captures this and send it around, and as a memo to the council to review. Okay,
Just help clarify.
yeah. The one other thing I hoped we would do is so we can move forward on the City Hall art exhibit you've been requested to work on. And this is what we had before. Of considerations. I want to make sure that this captured the conversation that we had and that there are a few questions that we need to have answered by the city, and to see if there are any more questions that people want to add to that list. So if you take a moment to look through that.
Term number 5.
Yep.
Artwork will not be for sale. Contact information for artists will be available. So does that mean that the artwork could be from a private collection, just on display? Or
It just means you can't have it for sale in city property, like, as it rotates out, maybe someone.
could be theoretically, they could
Just not
contact.
while it's on display.
But let's make that clarification because I can see how that could be confusing.
So is not to be for sale?
Will not be for sale on city.
While it's being
property.
displayed. in city-
On city property.
There won't be a little red sticker that says
Right.
$1,200. Right.
Just put money in box.
Can the artist
We
have
can
some
Venmo.
kind of portfolio that has their, or not portfolio, sorry, notebook or something that has their.
I would ask a question, but I would.
their-
not. It's just, it's in that same vein of
Yeah.
commercial activities on city property.
Okay. But if we have a contact information for
Yeah.
the artist,
Or QR code.
QR code or something like that.
But not a QR code that lists a price. list.
No.
Exactly.
Their website or
Just-
On their web.
their
page.
Instagram,
Yeah.
wherever they want to be
I
contacted.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy. Anything else we need to clarify?
I just wonder if we should do you think we need to talk to the New Hampshire Art Association before,
I wonder if we should say we'll seek a partnership with and not just say New Hampshire Art Association, because I happened to mention this to PMAC and they're also interested in working with us on this. So partnership with local, what was he saying?
Associations,
Local
art
as-
associations or art organizations.
If I could chime in on number 2,
Yep,
pretty sure I have an answer for that.
okay.
Which number
The
2?
answer is no.
No,
And I was gonna chime in on that too, on number 2.
Is that too
No,
often?
No, it's in case of damage or theft, the city's
City's
insurance probably will
insurance.
not cover it. And the city will likely require
Oh,
that
the
whoever is
bottom.
exhibiting carry insurance on their pieces.
Okay,
right.
So-
Number 2.
so that would be if the
Remaining
artist,
questions.
Or that they sign a waiver saying
yeah,
that the city's not gonna be held
And
responsible for.
we need to work through
Okay.
these security issues and safety and things.
okay, so you're saying the city won't be responsible for damage or theft. The artists themselves may want to carry insurance on.
Exactly.
We may require.
and I wonder if that's how that's gonna impact artists, if they're going to wanna be part of it. I don't know,
About
then
the first one, what about a camera? No?
I can ask a question.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's a
I mean,
better
as an
chance
artist
that the
that
city
has
might be
displayed
willing
in
to.
lots
Doesn't have to be connected to anything.
Yeah.
So I will tell you that right now, when you rent a space, if you're a nonprofit and you use any city space, you have to
You have
carry
to
a
have
$1 million
insurance.
liability
Yeah.
policy. So, and that's even the case in public, like on sidewalks downtown.
Yeah.
So, that's the city policy.
So Lenny, do you carry insurance on your?
Absolutely not. I mean, I have insurance for my art studio. but I have displayed in restaurants in Portsmouth Historical Society 3 times, in, you know, hotels, an exhibit at Nichi-chan. I don't carry any insurance for that.
And have you had any problems?
Twice I've had something stolen. I used to exhibit in 100 Market Street. I had a piece stolen from there. And actually they covered 50% of the cost. And I had a piece stolen out of a college that I was exhibiting at. I had an exhibit hall. I put a display up and someone sold the piece and they did not cover it. I didn't have any insurance for it. Even if I donate, if an artist donates art, like to a fundraiser, like I've donated to the John Paul Jones House, the Strawberry Bank, to food pantry, you know, different exhibits where they're raising money, like on taxes, I can only do the cost of the materials, not the
That
sale
changes.
price.
Yeah,
But would that, would you sign something that says you're not, you know, the city would not be liable, or would that make you not?
No, because
Exhibit.
everywhere I've exhibited,
you sign a waiver like that.
I've never been asked to sign a waiver,
You have never been asked to.
never been asked to sign.
And you just take the risk that if something happens.
That's,
I think we would want
yeah, you'd have
a
to waiver.
release or a waiver.
Yeah.
Yeah, the city's definitely
Yeah.
Yeah.
not going to.
So
We'll find out what happens.
we'll find out.
Yeah, it's a process.
So we would change that to we can add a 9 that the city will not assume damage or theft and the artist may want to carry.
I think, do you require the artist to carry
No,
$1 million?
I think it would just be, you would do a waiver. It would just be the artist may want to carry.
Right.
Insurance.
So may, I'm gonna cross out must.
There's a legal department will help with that.
So if there are no other questions, then Sean, if you can find out about number 1 and number 3.
Yes.
I think we can.
Okay.
We can start. to
I
move
have
on.
a suggestion. I mean, I know city council's agendas can be quite long, but maybe at the start of a new exhibition, they might highlight it and just
I like that.
say it out loud and name the artists,
Absolutely.
you know, at the meeting.
We used to have receptions before
Yeah.
meetings. For some reason, the last year's been kind of
Yes, we do.
quiet.
Yeah.
But like the last year and a half it's been kind of
Well,
quiet, but
It's
we
not
can
this-
have a
For a
reception.
committee report, which is normally very
Yeah.
early on. for
Yeah.
to say, what you walked by tonight
Yeah.
is this, and it'll be here for this long amount of time.
We could also put it on our park website. We could put the information about the artists on the park.
I always used to think that when we had so many sports teams come in for their trophies, I was like, where are the art people?
Yeah.
You know, I tried to get the musical theater people to come after they would win their awards all over the country. They would never come, so.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because we want, the whole idea is to give some.
Yeah.
So you have,
publicity.
do an opening on a city council night
Yeah.
and have a reception at 6 o'clock before the council
Yeah.
meeting, and then the city council will, you know, be able to either be there or stop in if there's a non-public.
Yeah.
In-
While we're speaking about city council meetings, rumor has it the 14th of July will be quite
Yes,
an agenda. And it's the only meeting in July,
it's quite an agenda.
so.
Okay.
And there'll be-
Are you suggesting, wait, are you just, I mean, we need to go forward with that, right?
Oh, we
you
should,
need to
because
get on the
otherwise
agenda.
we're gonna be making it public, so we've got to.
Yeah.
I will
It'll be fine.
Out of state.
We've got to go.
Can we get early on the agenda? Is that?
Early on the agenda?
Yeah.
Well, if it's,
Presentation.
for the council, but this is committee updates are normally early.
Yeah.
Is that what this is?
Yeah,
That's great.
Okay.
It'll come in as a report,
yeah,
Report from the committee, so it'll be.
Yeah. our recommendation.
Yeah.
recommendation. So that'll come at the top of the meeting.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that the chair is called upon to come and discuss that.
The other thing I would say related to Bohingo Park, I don't think we'll be there for the 14th, but Bob Thorson is still pursuing Seizure. And Bob had the idea, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but he has an ask into her about whether, you saw that design of the bench, which was kind of whether doing the first part of the bench to spread out funding, which would be half of the bench, and then the other half would come with additional fundraising. He's asking her if that's a possibility, but we still don't have costs or any information, which is why we're not pairing it with the NABI. We just don't have enough information.
There will be 2 city council meetings in August.
So anything else?
Oh, let me just ask you a question. Anthony is willing to come to the July 14th meeting. Do you think that's a good thing, or do you think it's too much because the agenda is so?
I don't know that we did not have CJ Chen present until the work was till later in the process.
So maybe
we-
contact.
Yeah, we had a concept presented and voted to approve that without the artist, I believe, present.
She was also in California, so it was,
I think it might be better if we make arrangement, if we get to where he has a maquette to come and display the
Do an
maquette.
update then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for the city council, because then they would have something to see, to look
Okay.
at. Yeah,
Okay.
so in that 3 to 6, but plus it would put it on the radar for people as far as park raising.
yes.
Yeah.
So July 7th, just to put in people's minds, as I think that's a really important thing.
Oh, I thought you said so.
That's the Vaughn Mall public meeting.
Meeting on the 11th.
Yeah.
I will forward that.
That's great. Anything else? I know, it's so nice to be freezing, isn't it?
I wore a sweater once.
I waited 4 months for warm weather.
So a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second, great.
I'm sorry, I'm taking stuff. And back, got it.